So today is part 2 of a 4-part series on what's working now, where I am sharing with you this place on our entrepreneurial journey called a critical inflection point. At least this is what I call it. And it's where you start to see that what you're doing, what you've always been doing, the direction that you're headed, something feels off about it. And you don't necessarily know the answer to a whole host of questions that your mind is asking you every day, which is things like, do I hire somebody to replace me within the company? Do I bring on a partner? Do I sell to my partner? Do I exit the company and start something new? Do I fully exit and just, rest on my laurels? There's all these questions that our mind can start asking us and I've found it to be about 6 or 7 years into the business that you're in. And your mind will start to ask these questions. It will start to get anxious. It will be afraid, feeling like, well, if I do retire, then am I going to get bored? If I do bring in a partner, am I going to resent that person? If I do what my spouse is wanting and work less, am I going to even be able to be present at home? There's all of these questions that our mind keeps serving up to us throughout the day. And it can become really difficult to navigate these questions with any sort of certainty, with any sort of clarity. And so the purpose of sharing my story and example is to use myself as that beacon or light, if you will, to shine a light on your life and your experience so that you can navigate these things powerfully. This is what I'm all about, is how can you ultimately become the man, the woman that God created you to be? And how can your business be an incredible vehicle for you to be that light and to share your gifts and talents and abilities with the world in a way that it's meaningful, that it's fulfilling, that it's rewarding, that, you experience what we all want to experience, which is growth and the momentum that comes with that. So in last week's episode, we ended with talking about how I made the decision to sell the company and I jumped. And so today I want to talk about what happens on the other side of that jump. There's so much that we project onto what's going to be on the other side of that. And almost none of it is true. And so many things show up that we're not expecting. So I make the decision, we sell the company. We actually, in doing that, I fully immersed myself in better understanding the world of digital products and direct marketing. And I signed up to be a part of Russell Brunson's Inner Circle. And in fact, we signed the contract to sell the company and officially do the deal in Boise, Idaho at Russell Brunson's headquarters, in between sessions. And I remember being excited and feeling like this is a new season in our life, and we're taking everything that we learned from the physical products world and we're bringing it to this new, wild, exciting frontier of digital products. And my experience with marketing, my experience with branding, my experiencing with communicating concepts and ideas to people. And so I was really excited about this. And at the same time, there was so much unknown. And so I made this decision to specifically coach women. And I was moving into the space of coaching women. And I thought, I understand what they're going through. I can relate to them significantly. And I can really help them because I'm one of them. And so I move into this world, and it wasn't overtly obvious in the beginning, but I didn't like it. And I was tired of the whining. I was tired of the excuses, and I was tired of the crying, both from them and from me. And I was like, man, stand up straight. And you have something incredible here, and you just need to make a couple tweaks. And so I started realizing that, yes, I can help women. I absolutely can. And some of my greatest potential clients are male because they don't have the perspective that I have, and they don't understand and see what I see, both as a person who's experienced in design and the unique gifts that I have as being female. And so as I'm in this world of trying to navigate this new decision, what I wasn't expecting was all of the regret I was going to start to feel for having made this decision. And I had this very overwhelming and strong desire to go back. I wanted to go back where it felt familiar. I wanted to go back where it felt safe. I wanted to go back where, yes, there were issues, but at least they were known and they were familiar and I knew how to handle those issues. And I wanted to go back to being Katie from Pudge. Like I couldn't hide behind the brand anymore. I was Katie Richardson, LLC. And I was like, what was I thinking? Now I'm like at the forefront. Before I was the face of the company. Now I am the company. What was I thinking? And I was just experiencing all these feelings of, we moved out of that 20,000 square foot warehouse and we literally threw away so many things that was so hard and excruciating to throw those things away. But like that season of my life was over and it didn't make sense to then put those things in storage because I didn't have a physical products company anymore. Therefore, I didn't need all those Pantone swatches and those material samples and those history boxes and boxes of prototypes and material samples. Like I didn't need those things anymore. And so I made that decision. I literally threw it all away. We moved some of it to the new headquarters in the Bay Area, but a lot of things I'd literally thrown away. And there was this part of me that was like, what was I thinking? What was I doing? That took me a decade to build that up. And I literally threw it in the dumpster and sent it to the dump. And now I'm in this world that I thought I was going to be so awesome at, and I'm not. I'm crap. Like I turn on the camera now and I can't deliver a message. And you can see that I don't even believe what I'm saying. And I'm tripping over my words and I'm afraid to look into the camera. And I'm pausing all the time saying, wait, what was the outline? What was I supposed to say here? And I was horrible at it. I was even miserable with the women that I was talking to. I was like, stand up straight, woman, and you're not a victim and stop talking like that. So I'm in this place of questioning and doubting. And I also, and maybe you'll relate to this, I also felt like a total imposter. Like, yeah, I'd built a business and I'd done some incredible things, but there were a lot of things that didn't work out. And there were a lot of things that I really believed that I had failed in. And there were a lot of things that I thought, if people knew that piece of the story, they wouldn't put me on a pedestal. And so there was a part of me that also felt like I wasn't even qualified to be helping and coaching people on their business. And all of a sudden, as I was fully standing in this place, in this declaration of I am a coach and I will support you in your business, all of a sudden that part of my mind that didn't believe I was worthy or didn't believe that I was, like, it took over and grabbed the mic and was like, you have no authority, and who gives you the right to try and tell that man or that woman what they need to do in their business. And I would have mornings where I would wake up and I would stare at the ceiling and I was like, I can't do it. I can't face it. I even had clients and I was feeling anxiety just getting on the phone with them and feeling like, what am I going to say today? What am I going to say today that actually makes a difference and justifies the investment that they've made? And I'd have these crying sessions in the shower and I would be mad at God. I would read scriptures and I would be like, that's not true. That's not what's happening in my life. And I just was in this constant place of inner turmoil, fear. And you know what I was feeling like a lot was frantic energy. I just was frantic. I was anxious. I felt like if I'm going to tell the world that I'm a business coach, then I sure as heck better be a good one. And I better make people's investment worth it. And I felt like I had to prove myself. And it was terrifying. And it had me anxious. It had me anxious with my kids. It had me anxious and on edge with my husband. Like he would try and help me. And I was just frantic and anxious and get really defensive and upset and frustrated. And he would try and help me make a video series. And I'm like, you need to leave the room because when you're in the room, I can't record this. Like, I'm just mad and I'm feeling regret for selling the company. And I had to talk you into it. And maybe I was wrong. And so I'm in this place of feeling all of those disempowering feelings and scared. And honestly, I wanted to run and hide from it all. It was terrifying. And so to try and help me through all of this, my husband, because he's amazing and loves me, and could see the turmoil that I was in, he was trying to help me set some targets, set some goals. He was like, why don't you set some goals for yourself? What would you like to do as a business coach revenue wise? That's a very definable target. What's a revenue target that you could set for yourself in the next 90 days? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I'm in a totally new world. I have no idea what is appropriate given my experience, given my knowledge, given the wisdom that comes from that experience, given the needs of my clients. I was just like, I have no idea, which isn't true, by the way. But like, that's all I could keep getting out. And so he threw out a number and he was like, okay, how about you try and do $100,000 in the next 3 months? And I was like, what? $100,000 in the next 3 months? Who do you think I am? There's no way. That's crazy. That's madness. Like maybe you could do that, but I don't have the skills and the abilities to do that. I don't know anybody who could pay that. And I immediately had tremendous resistance to his suggestion, 6 figures in 3 months. And I was like, that's impossible. If I were to do that, I would be setting myself up for failure. And it terrified me. When I thought about setting $100,000 as my quarterly goal, I just wanted to run and hide. So you know what I did? I pulled it back significantly. And I was like, you know what? I'm really overwhelmed right now. There's a lot of things that I'm feeling, and just trying to shoot a video, I've got this imposter syndrome shrieking in my head as I'm trying to shoot a video about, building your company and creating clients and customers. And it just was exhausting. And so I said, I've got to, if I'm going to do this and set a target, it's got to be one that I believe is even possible. Otherwise, I'm just going to run and hide from the whole thing. And so I did what might be counterintuitive. And by the way, goes against all of the, 10x advice. But I'm going to say, when you're in that delicate place of transition, you have to choose target goals and objectives that you don't think you have to hide from. And I knew that I couldn't show up and do the work if I felt like I needed to hide from these things. So I pulled it back and I said, okay, Katie, you're saying you don't know what your goal and target needs to be, but Ben threw out a number and you're like, definitely not that number. And so I started to think, well, what would feel achievable? Not like crazy easy, because come on, you don't want to underperform, but you need to stretch yourself. And so I thought, okay, what is a number that is outside of my current realm of possibility? Meaning I've never done it before, but feels close enough that it feels real, it feels tangible, and it excites me to show up and be like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And it has me running towards it rather than running away from it. And so I kind of brought different numbers to mind, and 25,000 came to mind. And I was like I got that sideways smile when I thought about doing 25,000 in 3 months. And I was like, that sounds fun. That sounds like something I haven't ever done before, but it sounds like, yeah, I could do that. Given my experience and where I'm at in learning this whole process of digital marketing and coaching and course creating, I was like, I could do that. And so I let that be my number. Quick question for you. What would happen in your business and life if you could show up powerfully? As a coach to high-performing entrepreneurs, I help intelligent people like you do just that. And if you want to be inspired by people who are getting more done in 90 days than most people do all year, I'm going to invite you to go check out my case studies. The website is now.katierichardsson.com/case study. And the cool thing is we've got so many case studies there. You can find an entrepreneur who's just like you. I've also got a link for you down in the show notes. Okay, back to the show. I want to share a principle with you right now. It's something that, without realizing it, I had been living it since the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And if you've listened to the first, I think it's 8 episodes of my podcast, then you've heard the story of the moment where my business was taking off, but I had this fear about my future and, am I a good mother if I build a business? And I'm kind of in that battle and I'm talking to God in my head. And, I know that you created me to be a woman, but did you also create me to build businesses? I wasn't so certain about that. I didn't know how it related to my eternal journey as I'm existentially asking all these questions and sweeping the kitchen floor as my kids are finally asleep. And, what I was fearing in that moment is if I were to continue to move forward in this unknown direction, because it was so unknown, I'd never gone down that road before. And even people that I personally knew hadn't gone down that road. And in fact, a lot of people who loved me were kind of advising me against it, saying it's risky. And to continue to move forward, it felt like an experiment on my life. And that terrified me. And yet, it started to become the very thing that allowed me to move forward in that direction. It was this experiment. And actually this morning, I was thinking about that word and how it's been the bridge between the cliff that I find myself on and then being able to like take that leap and bridge the gap between the chasm that's in front of me and where I ultimately want to be. It becomes an experiment. And there's a scripture, I believe it's in LDS scripture in Alma. And it is talking about paying tithing and how it's an experiment upon my word, and how, it might not make intellectual sense that, paying charity and giving to people who have less than you, even when you feel like you don't have a whole lot, that doesn't necessarily make intellectual sense. But God makes all of these promises that if you will do these things, I will open the windows of heaven and I'll pour out a blessing that you don't even have room to receive. And it's like, that doesn't make intellectual sense. I don't understand what you're saying. And yet he gives you a challenge in the scriptures. And it's like, experiment upon my word. And he's basically saying, you don't have to believe me. Like, go test this out. Go try it on. And so that's what I had done at those critical junctures in my life, is I had said, this isn't making logical sense to me. And moving in that direction, it's so unknown for me. And I don't know what's in that room, or I don't know what's on the other side of that cliff. And yet I can't let it go. And I know that continuing to go down the road that I'm currently on, I know where that leads. And it's not a road of growth. It's not a road of deeper connection with God. It's not even a road of innovation. And it's not the life of adventure that I want. And so at those critical junctures, I have to look at my options, see possibility, make a decision, leap, and then I'm immediately met with resistance. Immediately, by the way, on so many levels. And you will be too. And that's life saying to you, okay, I know you made that decision, but did you mean it? Did you really mean it? Because it's not easy and it's going to be hard. And you're going to fall flat on your face, and you're not going to be the expert in the room anymore. And you're going to have to go ask other people to help you. And that's humbling. And that's embarrassing. And so I'm in that place, and I wanted to go back, and I wanted to rewind the tape of my life and make a different decision. But I had to face the reality that I had made this decision, and I had jumped, and I had to face the consequences of that. And I had to shoulder the responsibility of that. And how did I do it? It was by experimenting. And, I told you I made this decision that I was going to coach, and specifically I was coaching women. And I experimented on that. And you want to know what I discovered? I didn't love it. And there was too much whining, and there were way too many excuses. And listen, I'm making all these general statements about women, and maybe you even know some of the incredible women who have worked with me, and they are amazing. And I love working with them, and I still love working with them. And there was a part of me that also wanted to work with men. Maybe it was the part of me that felt like I needed to prove something to my dad. Maybe it was the part of me that felt like I needed to prove something to my husband. Maybe it was the part of me that felt like I needed to prove something to the other boys on the track and field in the 6th grade. I don't know. But there was a part of me that was like, exclusively working with women isn't what I want. So that experiment taught me that there was something else that I wanted. So sometimes we have to make a decision. We have to leap in order to better understand that direction, and then have the courage and the humility to course correct. So I had built funnels, I had built websites, I had done all these videos and messaging, and it was all about women in business. And I had to own the brutal truth that I don't like that. And that's not me. And I want to help a specific personality. That's what I ultimately started to realize, is there was a personality that I wanted to help, an individual. And yes, sometimes it's a woman, and yes, sometimes it's a man, but that's who I want to help. And I had to scrap everything I'd done for that 6+ months and own the truth that what I wanted was bigger than what I could own 6 months ago. And I had a hard time saying that I wanted to coach men. Like, I felt inferior, I felt insignificant, and I felt like, who are you to think that as a woman that you can coach a man? I had to face and confront all of those things. But it was this principle of being willing to experiment and have the courage to step into the dark that ultimately led me to that decision. And so I want you to see that as you make these decisions to pivot, as you make these decisions, maybe to expand your existing business, as you make these decisions, and they're usually about 6, 7, 8 years in, that it's like time for a change again, especially if you're like me and you have this entrepreneurial personality. There are these critical moments where it's time to make a change. It's that inflection point. And you will make a decision, you will move forward, you'll immediately be met with resistance. And that is what needs to happen, because that pushback will help the truth surface, and it will help you see what you truly want. And it will help, in my case, it helped me say the thing that I was afraid to say, which is like, yeah, I can even help a man. Which, like, listen, I'm a kid of the 80s. I grew up in a specific era. In that era, a woman's place was in the home. And I appreciate that. And listen, when it comes to domestication, I'm your girl. Like, I can sew, I can cook, I can even work a bandsaw and a skill saw, and I can do it all. And so having the courage to say what I truly wanted, which was to, yes, I want to help women and I want to help men. And it was by making that decision, making that leap, facing the resistance, and having the courage to experiment on my life and experiment on the promptings and inspiration and answers to prayer that God was giving me, that I was arguing with him on, being like, well, that won't work because of this. And I can't do that because I'm only this. You know, having the courage to experiment even on the things that he was sharing with me through scripture, through dreams. I mean, I had a dream one morning. I won't go into the details, but it was like, stop trying to go back, Katie. You can't go back. There is no going back. It doesn't exist anymore. And you got to keep going. And so I want you to see that in this process, there will be resistance. And the way that you move forward is that through continuing to experiment, learning, and course correcting. So as I am sharing and relating what it's like to be in the middle of making these big life decisions and then taking action and then feeling trepidation or regret and trying to navigate all of those things, something you may have picked up on is the fact that I wasn't doing this on my own. And I was working with a coach. And why is that relevant to us right now? Because you're listening to this podcast because, like me, you have experienced this feeling of, what is my next move? And how do I both define that next move? And then how do I even create a plan for getting there? And sometimes this journey of entrepreneurship, you know, we grow up with this vision of our life, and we use business as a vehicle to create and bring to life that vision. And then once you create that vision that you've had for your whole life, the question then becomes, now what? And it's kind of terrifying because beyond that vision, it's very fuzzy. It's maybe very dark, and there's not definition, right? It's very low resolution. You're like, well, I don't want that. And I know that I like having fun, and I don't like dealing with that kind of a customer, and I don't like dealing with returns, and I don't like the headache of this piece of my business. So you have some like low resolution definition of what you want for the future. But honestly, it just feels so unactionable and unknown. And this is where I can support you in both bringing definition to this thing and then making a plan for how to make that actionable. So what's the coolest way we could do this? How about you come to Puerto Rico? You get to experience the magic of the Caribbean. You get to experience the magic of an entrepreneur who is creating freedom and independence for myself, my family. And you can come be in the room, and I can show you this process of what it's like to define your next move. And it's not what you would expect. And it includes components and pieces of how can we do this in a way where it's meaningful to you? How can we do this in a way where it's fun, it's exciting, and you're experiencing the growth and the momentum that comes with that? Hey, can we even include God in this conversation? You betcha. Like, how can we include your calling in your life and use the resources and your business as a vehicle for you to be that light in the world? Those are the questions that I was always asking. And those are the questions that I continue to ask. Those are the questions that my clients bring to me, and I show them this process. And there is a process for defining what that next season of your life is. And it's intimidating, it's scary, and it's so difficult to do on your own. It's like even the greatest surgeon would never try and perform surgery on himself. So why in the world do we try and do these things on our own? I don't know. But I have found that working with an expert, working with somebody who understands all of the parts and pieces in great detail, but is able to zoom out with you and organize them in a way where it makes sense, that is what I'm doing. And I'm doing it in person in Puerto Rico, November 9th, 10th, and 11th. It's going to be an incredible exclusive event. I'm going to be putting you up in an incredible place in Old Town San Juan, a place that is rich with color and history and beauty. And together, we're going to work together with 8 other individuals, and we're going to work together. And I'm going to show you this process of what it means to create a business that's meaningful, that has you feeling tremendous passion and drive and that momentum, and doing it in a way that it creates resources so that it can be this upward spiraling flywheel of all of those things that you want. And so I've got, you can go learn about this event in much greater detail on my website now, now.katierichardsson.com/event. This is unprecedented. I've never done an event in Puerto Rico, that's for sure. And so there's a lot that can happen in this immersive 2 days where we can block out the noise of life, block out the noise of the world, and we can get more done in 2 days. And we can bring definition to this thing that you've been wanting, that you've been feeling pulled towards and drawn towards, and yet there's been this lack of definition that it's made it actionable. And so in 2 days, I'm going to create that environment where the truth will surface. You'll be able to have the definition of what it is that you want in this next season of your life, and you'll leave with a plan that is actionable. So go learn more about this incredible event in Old San Juan with me and 8 other epic, amazing, incredible entrepreneurs just like you. And I hope to see you in San Juan. Now, that is the message for today. And in next week's episode, we're going to talk about what I was learning as I made that pivot and that shift. And I continued to learn things about my profession and the environment of coaching and what that meant for me. And I was discovering things about myself. I was discovering things about other people. I was discovering more and more things about business and how dissatisfied I was even as I was expanding that. And I'm going to show you how I really dialed it into a way where it felt like I'm trying to like pull together an analogy here. It was like all parts of the machine were working together, and it was no longer fighting against myself. And it was fun. It was exciting. And a lot of the frantic energy and the fear began to dissipate. And I'm going to show you how I did that. And I'll see you in the next episode.